Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with New York City-based jazz pianist and composer Amina Figarova. She opened up about her 2019 CD, Road to the Sun. With the release of this album, she is celebrating the 20th anniversary of her band. When she was a child, she studied to be a classical concert pianist, and in '98, she was invited along with her husband to the Thelonious Monk Institute's summer jazz colony in Aspen. And then, for more than a decade, she's been at it, getting booked all over the place at clubs, halls, and festivals. And this couple has gained legal immigrant status as of 2014. They have a great story of their origins, so get to know her and dig this interview, my friends.
Amina, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's talk about your album, Road to the Sun. Give me an idea of what you were going for. It's a very colorful album, on the outside and on the inside. So just give me an idea of what your vision for this album was.
Road to the Sun is indeed a celebration of 20 years anniversary of my band. And it's been a long road, and it's been a lot of adventures. I started up with a septet inspired by big bands. And my first few CDs writing was very much inspired by big band, by this big sound. When I came to the point, I was writing September Suite, which was inspired by 9/11, and in the process, actually, my father passed away, so it was dedicated to mourning. So my writing kind of changed, and I started exploring whole different ways of writing. So the process, writing for the band became my instrument, was very interesting, like starting from almost very traditional sound to September Suite into a very different kind of experiments that I was doing with my band. And this particular album, first of all, what I did is I added 3 strings, violin, viola, and cello. Some songs are pretty much straight ahead, but some of them are, what I was looking for, are in layers, which means that, let's say, flute starts the melody, then trumpet comes with another melody, and then soprano saxophone, tenor saxophone comes on top of it with the third melody, and then violin and viola and so on. So it's kind of like lots of layers, like in a cake, and that's what I think was my main point on this album, besides adding strings, also bringing all these layers and structures, which is very different from what I was writing before.
So give me an idea of where you were born and raised and how you kind of got into music.
I was born and raised in Azerbaijan, which is a independent country now, and it was a part of the Soviet Union. It's south. It's at the Caspian Sea. It's on the border with Turkey, so I'm a southern girl. I grew up in a family of non-musicians, but a family who loves music, and music is so important in our family. So my mother, my father, they both loved jazz. Also classical music, also traditional, but most jazz. So I grew up listening to jazz, but of course classical education was the more traditional in former Soviet Union. So I started playing when I was 2 years old, just simply because I discovered the piano, and I was looking for the sounds I've heard on radio and TV, and I could find it. So that's how I started playing piano. And then when I was 6, I went to the special music school for, it's kind of like a conservatory university for little children. And I studied classical music, but along the way I was listening to jazz. And then when I was a teenager, I discovered Motown music, and that's it. I fell in love with Motown music. And that was my education. And then later on, I was invited to play concerts and to do some projects in the Netherlands, in Europe, and I was actually invited to study film music, and I did it just for a couple of months, and I switched to the jazz piano, and I almost immediately was chosen to go as a first exchange student to Berklee College of Music. That also started at the Monk Institute summer camp. So a lot of studies are in here.
Absolutely.
Jazz, yes. And I come from a very, traditionally very, how to say it, our music is very, traditional music, very special and rich today. Lots of people combine the music that comes from my country, which is called mukam, with jazz. So I grew up with a lot of actually improvisation, even in the folk music. So that was always natural for me to improvise.
What jazz musicians in the very beginning did you get hooked on that really inspired you?
I grew up listening to Oscar Peterson, Errol Garner, and I loved it, but I was not, my favorite records when I was like little, was more of the Ella Fitzgerald, and I loved singers as a child. And then when I was a little older, then I was totally hooked up on Herbie Hancock. And Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea, but mainly Herbie Hancock. And I loved his records, the ones he had Hubert Loves on, and the sound of the band with the flute. I just loved it. And later on in the Netherlands, I met the flute player that I married. So it's just pretty fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So you go to the Berklee College of Music, then you get into the Thelonious Monk Institute. What did you learn about jazz in these formal environments?
It's not just what you're learning at school. It's more about what you're learning in environment, in playing with musicians, outside of school actually a lot, because we were jamming all the time, playing with each other in different environments. That was the most important, I guess, experience, and just being in that environment was incredible. When I was at summer camp at Monk Institute, I mean, if you just think about our big band, our band, so it was like a kind of, big band formation, and we all started with absolutely top musicians in Aspen, Colorado. So if you think about our big band, so it was myself on piano, we had Mike Moran on guitar, we had Jalil Shaw on the alto sax, we had Whitney Scoffer on tenor sax, Jonathan Blake on drums, Freddie Hendricks and Jeremy Pelt on trumpet. I mean, Sarah Castle violin. I mean, you can imagine today that musicians are a very important, part of the jazz scene. But we were playing together and we were inspiring each other, and I think that was the most important part of studying in actually all schools and camps.
Did you always think you were going to be a musician and move to New York? Was that always a dream of yours?
Well, since I started playing when I was 2 years old, and I was, to me it was clear I am a musician. I was not ever even question. It was never a question in my mind. All I wanted is play and travel, and that's what I did. When we, myself and my husband, when we came to Berklee College, that was in '92, we were going back and forth to New York because my husband was studying with Dave Valentin. First time we came to New York, both of us, we loved the energy of the city. We loved the whole, it's so groovy and the energy is incredible. We decided that we want to move to New York, but we were just studying, and after, Berklee, we went back to the Netherlands. And then, it takes some energy to move to another country. So it just took a while, and meanwhile we were so busy traveling all over the world. So finally we made the move 9 years ago.
When you got to New York and started playing your first gigs, were you nervous, or did it just seem natural to get on stage in one of the biggest hubs for jazz in the world?
No, I was not nervous. I was very happy. I started playing in New York before we moved to New York City. We were traveling with my sextet from the Netherlands at the time. I think we started already playing in New York City in 2000. And I was very lucky that I could, right from the start, play at my favorite places, which is the Jazz Standard, I think one of the best clubs in New York City, Jazz at the Lincoln Center. So right from the beginning when I was coming, so I started playing in really the beautiful locations. But, when you have your own band with you, you feel very comfortable. And I think having band and having this incredible chemistry that you built for many years is so important. So it's like you travel with your family and you come on stage with families. It feels very good and very comfortable. I was just very excited and happy to play in New York. We spent a lot of time in California, a lot of time in New Orleans, played, beautiful festivals like Chicago Jazz Festival, Newport Jazz Festival. There was actually, I believe, our band was the first European band to play the main stage, and that was incredibly exciting. So, no, never nervous, but always excited and happy.
What live jazz show did you see very early on in your life that inspired you?
Lots of great. I mean, every time I would see Wayne Shorter, that's School on its Own, seeing Keith Jarrett performing live at Carnegie Hall. Every time he would, come to Carnegie Hall, I would try to make it, and that's a lifetime experience. When I was playing the Newport Jazz Festival at the same stage, the same day that I was playing, there was a Herbie Hancock band and Wynton Marsalis with Dave Brubeck. So I just stayed on stage. I was very close to the band, and that was another great and very, inspiring experience because you're so close and you're almost there, and you feel the energy between the musicians. I really admire the way Wynton Marsalis leading his band, and he sets certain very high standard, and it translates immediately. You feel that that very high standard energy. The same with Herbie Hancock. So all of it. Played many times at New Orleans Jazz Festival. I was right there when McCoy Tyner was playing with Terence Blanchard, and that was also another crazy experience that I learned a lot. But also playing with musicians like James Moody and Randy Brecker, Curtis Fuller, Nathan Davis, just performing with this incredible legends was a huge inspiration for me. And it is. It's there. It will never go away.
Yeah. So why do you love jazz?
Why do I love jazz? Because I think it's hard to explain, because I really fell in love when I was a child. And I think because it was very natural for me always to improvise. As a classical musician, I loved to play variations. I would play all kinds of variations, wherever it's Mozart, Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, or Rachmaninoff, whatever. I would play variations. So to me, I think improvising was always very natural. I didn't like to play the same melody twice when I was even a very little girl. So I think it has to do something with the tradition of our music that I always love to improvise things around, because jazz is the most democratic and most, it's in a way the most intellectual music, but at the same, and sophisticated, but at the same time it's very, it brings all your emotions. It has so many sides that it reflects the life just the way it is. It's hard to tell why you love someone, right?
Yeah,
but that's
sure. So my final question to you is this. If you come to Kansas City to play a live show and you have to write up kind of a flyer or a notice to let people know what you do during a show that they should see, how would you advertise what you do live?
Someone wrote once that sextet became my instrument. So, which I think it's a great way to say it. So I would probably write that I'm coming with my instrument on stage with my sextet, which became part of my life, part of my existence for past 20 years. And what I'm And I think that, people feel that in audience, whenever we play, what I'm trying to do and what I think works is to reach every individual soul with my music, because my music reflects very, very, very different emotions and has a very different spectrums. So, the connection with the audience for me is very important, because I also sometimes involve audience in helping me to find the titles for my songs, which, like my previous CD, Blue Whisper, that was the title given by audience. So reaching to each and every person in the audience and to have a communication through the music, I think that would be the answer.
Wonderful. That's a great answer. Great way to wrap everything up. Thank you for taking a minute out today to talk about your latest album, Road to the Sun, and about your life and music. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the world. And thanks to Amina for her time, her music, and her stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.